Now initially, when we decided to make the move from the propane stovetop to the diesel stovetop, we also wanted to eliminate the camp stove, the portable propane stove for the outside, and we were going to replace that with a backpacking stove that could run on diesel. However, we made the decision to purchase this Nuwave Induction cooktop instead.
This was plan B, but this was thrown in the mix at the last moment and it sounded like a better idea for a few reasons. One, it'd be simpler setup outside. Two, it would be a backup stovetop inside here in case the Nordic DT went down for some reason or went into service. The Nordic DT has to go into service, I believe, every 400 hours of use or so. So this seemed like it was much more versatile. And then all of a sudden, Lauren moved it inside and started using it when we arrived here at our work camping job.
Now, how do these two cooktops compare? Let's start with the power consumption. Now I'm going to talk about power consumption as it relates to 12 volt DC power coming from our batteries through the inverter on the Nuwave Induction cooktop. For this cooktop, we've read approximately 130 amps draw at most on the maximum setting. For the diesel stovetop, on the maximum setting, it will draw 0.75 amps. And on a low setting, 0.5 amps. This does not include the initial startup power, which is 9 amps to get the stove started. After that startup period, then it will draw the 0.75 or 0.5, dependent on the heat setting you have it at.
That's impressive. Now that's more than the traditional RV propane stove takes, so downfall there, but still minimal amperage.
This does not only run on electricity though. This will have an electrical draw as well as diesel. As we said, it's a diesel powered stovetop. What is the fuel consumption of this stovetop? The fuel consumption will be 3 to 6.5 ounces of diesel fuel per hour, dependent on the setting you have it at. Now, if you do the math,
if you run it at the highest setting, drawing 6.5 ounces of diesel, that roughly translates to 19 hours of runtime on 1 gallon of diesel. On the minimum setting of 3 ounces an hour, that's roughly 42 hours of runtime on 1 gallon of diesel. That is quite a bit of runtime on so little fuel.
So that's the power and fuel draw if you're comparing it in DC 12 volt amperage. But when we're at a work camping job and we're hooked up to shore power, or we're in a park that we're paying for power, this stovetop is going to be run off of the shore power.
We are on shore power here, and she can use this every morning without issue. We do have a problem with high draw appliances because we are only a 30 amp rig. We can only bring in 30 amps from our shore power. Now when you look at an appliance like this, you can say it takes 12 to 15 amps. Our dryer, 12 to 15 amps. Air conditioner, a little bit more. So it's a high draw appliance. So that means we can only utilize certain appliances at certain times. That means we have to keep track or we blow a breaker, because we don't have an electronic load shedding device on our RV just yet. But this, like I said, was not part of the original plan. The original plan was to use this Nordic DT diesel stove as our primary stove.
Now that's all the technical stuff. Let's talk about practical operation of these stovetops. The diesel stovetop takes roughly 7 minutes to heat up. So it takes a little bit longer to get this one going, whereas the Nuwave Induction is almost an immediate response. You plug it in, turn it on, it goes. So how do we compare these? This is more like the wood-burning stove of the stovetop world. So it might take a little bit to get it going, but once you've got it going, you've got a great heat source. The induction is more like the microwave of the cooktop world. So you get an immediate heating, and it's heating the pan itself without as much radiant heat, versus the diesel, which you're going to get a little bit more radiant heat off of. Now, every cooktop's going to produce some sort of heat and heat up the cabin. The difference here is this one produces more radiant heat than the induction. As far as operation goes, the diesel cooktop has taken a little bit more time to adapt to, as it doesn't operate like a typical gas stovetop, or for that matter, an induction or electric cooktop, versus the induction cooktop, which was almost immediately usable without any time for adapting. That does not mean that this cooktop is bad. It just means it's taken a little bit longer to get used to. And in fact, it does produce a hotter cooktop than the propane cooktop, and I have enjoyed that about it very much.
Now, where I think the Wallas really shines is when you lower this lid and set the controls, it turns into an air heater running between 2,000 BTU and 6,500 BTU of nice, warm, hot, dry heat coming out the front lip here. Being an RVer and having one appliance that does two things, or anything that does two things, is a major plus because of space. That's where I really see that the diesel stove prevails. This may be good for a smaller RV that doesn't have as much roof space, for a solar system that can handle a high draw load such as an induction cooktop, or a build where you want a heater and cooktop in one because of space restrictions.
Let's talk about the cookware required for these stovetops. Is it necessary to purchase a specific type of cookware for these cooktops? The answer technically is yes. You want to use an induction style pan for an induction cooktop. Recommended from Wallas is that you use the flattest bottom pan possible so that you can conduct the heat in the most efficient possible way. We owned induction stainless steel pans and a cast iron pan. I can say that we've been able to use both of those style of pans successfully on each of these cooktops, and I've been very impressed by the performance of both. Would I choose one of these stovetops over the other? At the moment, my answer would be no, because initially we were very concerned about running an appliance that had a heating element off of our battery bank. I would say the concern is still there, but we're still willing to try it. However, if we get in a situation where we don't have sunshine to recharge our batteries, or we have other power needs, it's very nice to have an appliance that has a very low power draw and will run off of a fuel. So we have two cooktops useful in several different situations, and they almost act as backups for each other. If one's not going to work great in a certain situation, we can use the other one. And overall, both of these have performed extremely well, and we've been extremely happy with them. So induction or diesel, which is better? I'm still not sure, even after doing all of the pros and cons in this review. It's really dependent on your needs and your setup.